It was 11:51 at night. The Charlotte Airport first class lounge was completely empty except for me. My phone vibrated against the marble table. A text from my mother, Catherine, illuminated the screen. 3 sentences shattered my entire reality. She told me not to board the flight. I had paid $65,000 for this Aspen luxury ski trip. I funded every suite, every lift ticket, and every dinner to celebrate my sister Vanessa's pregnancy. Catherine gave my first-class ticket to Trevor's snobby mother, Erica. Instead, Catherine was desperate to impress her Atlanta socialite in-law. The justification she texted was a knife to the gut. She typed that my childless negative energy would ruin the baby moon. My years of painful fertility struggles were suddenly just a convenient excuse to discard me. I stared at the glowing screen. The air in the lounge went completely still. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. The initial shock evaporated, leaving behind a cold, sharp clarity. While I was still standing by the departure gate, a bank notification flashed across my screen. A fraud alert, a $15,000 charge at the airport duty-free luxury jewelry boutique. Catherine was using my emergency credit card to buy a diamond necklace for Vanessa. My pulse pounded in my ears. I opened my primary banking portal right there in the terminal. The screen loaded, and the true depth of the betrayal stared back at me. $50,000 had been wired from a joint emergency savings account directly to Trevor's corporate limited liability company. Because Catherine was a trusted joint signer on that account, a safety measure I set up years ago, in case of medical emergencies, the bank approved the transfer without calling me. She authorized the theft to secretly cover Trevor's failing crypto margin calls. I was not a daughter to them. I was an infrastructure. Catherine was willing to commit wire fraud just to maintain the grand illusion of Vanessa and Trevor's wealthy aesthetic. I sat down in the leather lounge chair and opened my property management portal. 2 years ago, I bought a $1.2 million estate in Charlotte so my parents could live rent-free. I pulled up the latest neighborhood reports. My parents were running an illegal, chaotic frat house short-term rental out of the property and pocketing the cash behind my back. They thought I was too busy working to notice. As a commercial real estate broker, I know exactly how fatal a lease violation can be. I already had a $1.2 million all-cash corporate offer sitting in escrow for that house. For weeks, familial guilt kept me from signing the final documents. That guilt vanished, replaced by absolute resolve. The illegal rental business legally breached their undocumented tenancy. It transformed the home into an abandoned commercial liability. A memory flashed through my mind, Thanksgiving dinner, Catherine maliciously mocking my empty womb in front of the entire extended family. Laughing as I sat in silence, I channeled every ounce of that humiliation into my index finger. I clicked the electronic signature box on the commercial addendums. The house was sold. The sanctuary was legally erased. I immediately logged into the American Express portal and permanently froze every single card in my name. The arrogant Bennett family strutted into the ultra-luxury Aspen Lodge the next morning. Through my phone, I tracked the exact moment the trap snapped shut. Catherine smugly handed over my emergency credit card to cover the mandatory $10,000 incidental hold for their suites. The machine declined it violently. She tried again. Denied. Pure panic set in. Trevor desperately swiped his crypto debit cards, but they were completely drained. Erica stood in the lobby, watching the humiliation unfold. The Atlanta socialite realized instantly that Trevor's boasted wealth was built entirely on stolen funds, terrified of being implicated in a massive financial scandal. Erica signaled for a taxi. She looked at her son with pure disgust and told him she would never have her name attached to a credit card fraud investigation. She called him a complete embarrassment. ordered him not to call her until his legal fees were paid, and abandoned them right there in the snow, penniless, humiliated, and completely stranded. My remaining family was forced to scrape together Trevor's last few loose dollars. They could not afford flights. They booked a grueling 40-hour commercial bus ride back to Charlotte, sleeping upright and freezing the entire way home, exhausted, filthy, and broken from the miserable journey. The family arrived at the Charlotte estate in the dead of night. The house was pitch black. The expensive furniture was gone. The rooms stripped completely bare. A massive corporate warning sign was planted in the front yard. Heavy industrial padlocks blocked the front doors. Marcus, blinded by entitled rage, refused to accept that his kingdom was gone. He grabbed a heavy landscaping rock and smashed a reinforced side window. Slicing his arm on the jagged glass, he and Trevor climbed inside the dark living room. The moment their boots hit the hardwood floor, standard cellular connected portable infrared sensors detected their body heat. The corporate buyers use these specific systems to secure vacant properties against squatters. A silent, verified burglary signal transmitted directly to the local police dispatch. Within minutes, tactical police cruisers swarmed the quiet cul-de-sac. Red and blue lights painted the neighborhood. Marcus and Trevor were slammed face down into the damp lawn. Heavy steel handcuffs clicked around their wrists for felony trespassing and breaking and entering. Catherine screamed hysterically on the sidewalk as the neighbors stepped onto their porches. Watching her carefully manufactured high society image burn completely to the ground. 2 days later, Trevor was bailed out by a shady business associate, seeking desperate vengeance. He and Vanessa ambushed me in the busy lobby of my corporate office building. Trevor stayed exactly 501 feet away to skirt his emergency restraining order. He used a megaphone to shout accusations while a hired proxy shoved a camera directly into my face. He was live streaming to his thousands of followers, trying to publicly cancel the abusive sister who left his pregnant wife homeless. The online chat scrolled rapidly, calling me a monster. Vanessa cried perfect, practiced fake tears. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I stayed dead calm. I reached into my briefcase and held up a printed ledger of his exact crypto wallet addresses. I looked directly into the camera lens and announced that the $50,000 Catherine stole had crossed state lines to cover his illegal margin calls. I told him I had already submitted the forensic data to the federal authorities for wire fraud. Trevor's face lost all its color. His investors, a decentralized, autonomous organization, were watching the stream live. Realizing he was entirely insolvent and had been lying about his trading profits, his backers instantly triggered a multi-signature smart contract freeze on his remaining trading pools. They locked him out of his own funds. He was bankrupted on camera in real time. Building security detained him in the revolving doors just as the police arrived to serve the federal wire fraud warrants. Vanessa collapsed against the marble pillar, her phone pinging frantically as her influencer sponsors dropped her contracts via email right there in the lobby. I turned my back, stepped into the elevator, and pressed the button for my floor. The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely public. Sitting in my secure downtown penthouse today, I can finally look back at the absolute wreckage they brought upon themselves. The federal judge sentenced Trevor to 6 years in federal prison for wire fraud, completely destroying his fake entrepreneurial empire. Marcus received 3 years of strict probation and mandatory community service for the felony trespassing charge. Catherine and Marcus are currently living in a cramped, decaying apartment on the outskirts of the city, drowning in legal debt. Vanessa, stripped of her sponsorships, her stolen luxury goods, and her golden child status. vanished entirely from the internet. She is facing the reality of raising a child without the endless pipeline of my stolen money to fund her aesthetic. Their social circle evaporated overnight. The country club revoked my parents' membership. The neighbors who witnessed the midnight police raid refused to make eye contact with them at the grocery store. Toxic people thrive in the shadows of your silence. But the moment you expose their actions to the harsh light of reality, their power disintegrates. A few months after the arrests, a thick envelope arrived at my office. It was a handwritten letter from Catherine. She wrote page after page about how much she missed me, how family is supposed to stick together through hard times, and how my future niece needed her wealthy aunt. She tried to weaponize her title as my mother one last time. She demanded forgiveness. I read the letter while sipping my morning coffee. My pulse did not rise. My hands did not shake. I calmly walked over to the paper shredder, fed the pages into the machine, and listened to the satisfying hum as her manipulation was ground into confetti. I threw the shreds in the trash and went back to work. I did not owe her a response. I did not owe her my peace. My life now is entirely unrecognizable from the chaotic nightmare they forced me to live in. I surrounded myself with a chosen family. I have mentors who respect my ambition, friends who celebrate my successes without asking for a loan, and a partner who values my presence, not my bank account. My commercial real estate firm just closed its most profitable quarter in company history. My home is quiet, safe, and filled with people who actually want to be there. When you spend your entire life being treated like a financial utility by the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, you start to believe your only value is what you can provide. But their entitlement taught me the greatest psychological lessons of my life. Rule number 1. The myth of unconditional family is a trap designed to keep you compliant. Biology is a simple genetic accident. Loyalty is a behavioral choice. You have absolutely no obligation to keep people in your life who weaponize your DNA to justify their abuse. If a stranger stole $50,000 from you, you would call the police. You do not give thieves a pass just because you share a last name. Rule number 2, discover the power of the trauma sandwich. Do not let your insecurities make you weak. When toxic people attack your deepest vulnerabilities, like my struggles with fertility, they expect you to shrink. They expect you to internalize the shame. Instead, use the exact pain they inflicted on you as the logical fuel to enforce uncompromising boundaries. Let their cruelty be the catalyst for their own eviction from your life. Rule number 3, beware the bigger person trap. Society constantly demands that victims forgive their abusers to keep the peace. People will tell you to let it go, to be the bigger person. But being the bigger person usually just makes you a larger target for continued abuse. True peace does not require apologies. And it certainly does not require reconciliation. True peace requires absolute, uncompromising distance. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. I took back my resources. I fortified my boundaries. And I reclaimed my future. Have you ever had to legally dismantle the life of someone who thought they could abuse you forever? When did you finally realize that funding your own abuse was a choice you could simply stop making? Share your story in the comments below. If you know someone currently trapped in a cycle of toxic family guilt, send them this video. Protect your peace. Build your boundaries. And never apologize for surviving. I am Brooke, and for the first time in my life, I am completely free. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there thinking, why on earth did Brooke wait so long? Why would a brilliant, successful woman buy a $1.2 million estate for parents who treated her like garbage? Why let them have access to a joint account with $50,000 in it? It is incredibly easy to judge from the outside. But let us break down the psychology of what was actually happening here. Brooke was trapped in what psychologists call the slot machine effect, otherwise known as intermittent reinforcement. Brooke was not stupid. She was addicted to the crumbs of hope her toxic family fed her. Toxic relationships operate exactly like a rigged casino. 99% of the time, they drain your energy, your self-esteem, and your wallet. But every once in a while, they give you a tiny fake payout, a polite smile at Thanksgiving, a brief compliment, a moment where you feel like you finally belong. That tiny payout keeps you pulling the lever, hoping for the jackpot of unconditional love. Brooke was funding the entire casino, desperately hoping her parents would eventually respect her. But when the illusion shattered at the airport, Brooke woke up and executed a masterclass in financial self-defense. Let us look at her street-smart survival tactics. The audit strategy. When Brooke saw that $15,000 duty-free charge, she did not call her mother to scream and cry. Emotional reactions are exactly what abusers want because chaos distracts from the math. Instead, Brooke logged straight into her portals and tracked the $50,000 wire transfer to Trevor's corporate account. Financial abusers rely on your emotional exhaustion. They bet that you will be too tired to check the receipts. Brooke checked the receipts. The legal buyout Brooke did not try to illegally evict her parents or throw their bags on the lawn, which would have ended in a messy, drawn-out tenant court battle. She utilized their own greed against them by proving they were running an illegal short-term rental. She established a lease violation that allowed her to legally authorize the corporate property takeover. She signed the escrow addendums and let the commercial developers change the locks. She used the law as her shield, building the ironclad case. During the live stream ambush, Trevor tried to weaponize public opinion. How did Brooke respond? Not with tears, but with a printed forensic ledger of his crypto wallet addresses. She exposed his interstate wire fraud on camera to his own investors. She didn't argue with his lies. She let his own arrogance trigger his federal downfall. For the first few weeks after everything collapsed, I kept expecting the panic to come back. I would wake up before sunrise in my downtown penthouse, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my phone to vibrate with another crisis I was expected to solve. Another unpaid bill, another emergency charge, another family accusation wrapped in guilt and delivered like a command. But the phone stayed silent. At first, that silence felt unnatural, almost dangerous. When you spend your whole life being used as the family emergency exit, peace does not feel peaceful right away. It feels like the pause before the next explosion. Your nervous system does not understand safety yet. It only understands waiting. So I waited. I waited for Catherine to find another way in. I waited for Marcus to send some self-righteous message about loyalty. I waited for Vanessa to post some tearful video about betrayal, motherhood, and cruel sisters who abandon pregnant women. I waited for Trevor's investors to blame me for exposing his fraud. But one by one, the doors stayed closed. The cards were frozen. The house was sold. The wire fraud case was no longer a family argument. It was a federal record. Their access to me had finally ended. Not because they suddenly respected my boundaries, but because I had built boundaries they could not talk their way through. That is the part toxic families never understand. They think boundaries are just emotional statements. They think I am done means convince me harder. They think a locked door is only temporary if they can scream loudly enough on the other side. But real boundaries are not speeches. Real boundaries are paperwork, password changes, frozen accounts, sold property, legal filings, police reports, new locks, new phone numbers. Real boundaries are the quiet systems you build when you finally stop begging dangerous people to become safe. A month after Trevor's sentencing, one of Catherine's old friends approached me outside a charity luncheon. She looked embarrassed, clutching her purse like it could protect her from the conversation. She told me my mother was devastated. She told me Catherine had lost weight, lost friends, lost her place in the social circles she spent decades trying to impress. Then she lowered her voice and said, "You know, no matter what happened, she is still your mother." I looked at her for a long moment. There was a time when that sentence would have worked on me. It would have reached straight into the softest part of my chest and twisted until I felt guilty for protecting myself. It would have sent me home questioning whether I had gone too far. But that version of me was gone. So I said, "And I was still her daughter when she stole from me." The woman went quiet, because there is no polite answer to the truth when the truth is finally said out loud. That was the last time anyone tried to negotiate my forgiveness on Catherine's behalf. Vanessa disappeared from the internet completely after her sponsors dropped her. For years, she had built a life on filtered ski trips, borrowed luxury, fake softness, and captions about gratitude. Without my money flowing behind the scenes, the entire image collapsed. Her followers moved on. Her friends became distant. The same people who praised her perfect life suddenly acted like they had never believed it in the first place. I did not celebrate that. I had no need to. The greatest punishment for people who live through performance is being forced to exist without an audience. Vanessa had to sit inside the life she actually built, not the one she curated with my credit cards. As for Trevor, prison stripped away every costume he had ever worn. No more crypto genius. No more visionary founder. No more wealthy husband standing beside a woman in designer maternity coats. Just a man who thought stolen money could turn him into someone important. Until the numbers told the truth. The numbers always tell the truth. That was the lesson I carried with me into the next chapter of my life. Not bitterness. Not revenge. Clarity. I began auditing everything. Not just financially, but emotionally, who called only when they needed something, who celebrated me only when my success benefited them, who made me feel expensive to love, but convenient to use, who expected endless loyalty while offering none in return. The answers were painful, but they were also freeing, because once you stop romanticizing people, you can finally evaluate their behavior. Once you stop explaining away cruelty, you can finally see patterns. And once you see the pattern, you are no longer trapped inside it. My home became my sanctuary, not because it was luxurious, but because it was mine in every way that mattered. No one had an emergency key. No one had access to my accounts. No one could walk through the door and demand that I shrink so they could feel powerful. I filled the room slowly. Fresh flowers on the entry table, books I actually wanted to read, soft blankets on the couch, framed photos of people who loved me without needing to drain me first. For the first time, success did not feel like a resource everyone else was lining up to consume. It felt like shelter. And maybe that is what healing really is. Not forgetting what happened, not pretending it did not hurt. Not forcing yourself to become some perfectly enlightened person who never feels anger again. Healing is when the memory loses the power to drag you back. Healing is when their voice can echo in your mind, and you still choose your own. Healing is when you stop confusing guilt with responsibility. Because I was never responsible for Catherine's greed. I was never responsible for Marcus's entitlement. I was never responsible for Vanessa's insecurity or Trevor's fraud. I was responsible for myself, my future, my safety, and the life I had worked too hard to build. That was enough. So if you are listening to this while being treated like the family bank account, the family safety net, the family fixer, the family punching bag, or the family sacrifice, Please understand something before you lose another year trying to earn love from people addicted to taking. You cannot outgive entitlement. You cannot out-earn disrespect. You cannot purchase a place in a heart that has already decided your value is transactional. The moment you stop paying, they will call you selfish. The moment you stop rescuing, they will call you cruel. The moment you stop answering, they will rewrite the story so they can remain innocent. Their version of you is not your responsibility anymore. Your peace is. And peace is not always gentle at first. Sometimes peace begins with a frozen credit card, a signed sales agreement, a fraud report, and a phone number you finally block without shaking. Sometimes peace looks like people calling you heartless because you finally stopped letting them break your heart for free. Let them talk. Let them lose access. Let them learn that your silence is not weakness, and your absence is not a negotiation. For years, I thought being loyal meant staying available, no matter how badly they treated me. Now I understand that loyalty without self-respect is just slow self-destruction. The flight to Aspen took off without me that night. For a while, I thought that was the moment I was left behind. I was wrong. That was the moment I stopped following them into a life built on theft, guilt, and humiliation. They boarded the plane into their own collapse. I stayed behind and finally chose myself. And in the quiet that came after everything burned down, froze up, fell apart, and exposed itself, I did not find loneliness. I found freedom. Here is the ultimate verdict. You cannot buy respect from people who are fundamentally committed to undervaluing you. Your bank account is not a substitute for their lack of a moral compass. Blood might give someone a seat in your life, but their daily actions determine if they get to keep it. Have you ever had to audit your own life and cut off someone who was draining your resources? How did you finally break the slot machine effect? Drop your stories in the comments below, because we read every single one. Subscribe to the channel for more strategies on protecting your peace and your assets. And remember, your loyalty belongs to those who earn it, not those who demand it.